Welcome everybody. Happy Tuesday, and thank you so much for joining PowerToFly and Chainalysis for another amazing chat and learn. We're really excited that you are taking time out of your day to spend with us and learn, and so I hope that you all enjoyed today's talk as much as I know I'm going to, because I've been really excited about this for a couple days now. So for those of you who don't know me, my name is Meg. I am part of the virtual hosting team here at PowerToFly, and I'm going to be your moderator and host for today's session. I'll introduce you to our speaker and our guest in just a minute. But before we get through that, I do just want to call out a couple of quick housekeeping items. If you've joined us on a past chat, apologies, this will be a little rote, but we'll get through it, and I'll kind of make sure that we save the bulk of our time for conversation with Alicia. So, just like all of our other virtual events, today is all about you. It's about our audience. It's about making sure that our community gets to learn and gets to ask the questions that they want to know and get those answers. So to that extent, you are more than welcome and highly encouraged to turn your cameras on, come off mute to ask questions or add comments. Don't worry if you are, rocking a messy bun or have a furry coworker on your, sitting next to you, or have kids running in the background. It's all welcome and appreciated, and we're all getting more and more real as we keep working from quarantine. So please feel free to show up for us in that way. If you don't want to come on camera, not a problem. There's no pressure. The one thing I do have to tell you is if you have any kind of privacy concerns, you will show up in the live recording and in the live stream of this if you come off mute at any time. So what I mean by that is if you have your camera on and you come off mute, your video will show up on the recording. If you don't have your camera on and you come off of mute, then just your display name or your picture, whatever you have showing up right now, is what we'll display. So if you want to participate but you don't want anybody to know that you're here, that is not a problem. All you have to do is put your question or comment into the Zoom group chat. If you are all in deep cover and really black ops and want to make sure nobody knows that you're here, you can still participate. All you have to do is send your message to me in the dropdown instead of to everyone. So in that Zoom group chat, there'll be a dropdown that says everyone, and you can just pick my name, Meg-PowerToFly, and I will try and get your question or comment raised, and I will keep you completely anonymous, no matter, it doesn't matter what your reasons are. So like I did say, this is being recorded. So on today's chat, don't feel like you have to take feverish notes or anything. Everybody that registered for today's session, whether you made it or you forgot about it, or you stay for 5 minutes or you stay for the full 60, everybody is going to get a link in an email in like 1 to 2 business days that will allow you to rewatch this event. So you can also catch it if you kind of can't wait, if you hear something like really great and you have to tell your friend or your cousin or your coworker right away. You can also hop on over to our YouTube channel where the live stream and the recording will be available as soon as we're done with today's session. Let's see. You can also keep up with us on socials. Like I said, we are on YouTube at PowerToFly. I highly recommend you subscribe to our YouTube channel. It's how you can stay up to date about events like this without cluttering up your inbox. You can also connect with us on various social media channels. We are at PowerToFly on Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, and Instagram. Please feel free to take pictures or video as we're chatting today. You're more than welcome to share and spread the love and let other people know that you are learning with PowerToFly today. Our preferred hashtag is #PowerToFly. So as we get going, the last thing I have to tell you is, like I said, if you are going to come off mute, you'll see that everybody's muted. Don't come off mute unless you are actively speaking. I say this because sometimes there's background noises that you don't really notice. I have this happen constantly with my 2 bulldogs that snore. So I will be going on and off mute a lot during today's session, just to make sure that we keep audio clear for everybody that's on the call and for our recording. Now, if you do come off mute to ask a question or comment, not a problem. Just make sure you go back on mute once you're done speaking. And if I do mute you, I won't mute you mid-sentence, but if I do mute somebody, it's not a rebuke. You are still more than welcome to participate. I'm just doing it to maintain audio clarity for everyone. If you have questions and you are a little bit tentative, you can always throw them in the chat, or you can throw in the chat that you have a question you'd like to ask. But if you just want to, brave ahead and come off mute to ask a question, like we encourage you to, just make sure that you're trying to not interrupt either Alicia, our speaker, or anybody else, like attendees or something, asking their questions. I get paid to fill the silence, so please feel free to interrupt me whenever you like. All right, so now that we've covered all that, I'm really excited to introduce you to our guest. Alicia Gansley is a software engineer with Chainalysis, and she has experience up and down the stack at several New York-based tech startups. She recently joined the data networks team at Chainalysis and is very excited to work on the complex intersection of business and technical challenges in the cryptocurrency space. So welcome, Alicia.
Thank you.
Is there anything you'd like to add to that quick bio, or anything about your background that you think is especially prescient for today's chat?
I think this is about it. I think the other thing I always like to mention is that I went to a liberal arts college, and so that's like a big part of where I come from. I think in my approach to engineering, it's maybe a little different, and maybe some of the people on the call with other different types of backgrounds can take that to heart a little bit.
Absolutely. Thank you for sharing that and highlighting that. Okay, so before we get going with the questions, I do just want to highlight the fact that Chainalysis is sponsoring today's chat, and they are hiring. So I'm going to drop a link into the chat here in just a second where you can follow Chainalysis. So what this link is going to do is it's going to lead you to their company page, and that's where you can learn more about them as a company. You can check out their open roles. And it's really important that if you gravitate to that page, and you especially are interested in working with Chainalysis, there will be at the top right-hand corner of the screen, there'll be a big pink follow button. Make sure that you click that button if you want to stay up to date on things. What it does is it puts you on their follow network. So it automatically alerts you when they post new roles, so you don't have to keep coming back to check their open roles and recheck message boards. It also tells Chainalysis that you are very interested in working with them because it puts you on that follow network that they can check at any time. It'll also alert you when they take part in events like today, events like our virtual career fair, our office hours, our future chat and learn sessions, our summits, any of that kind of stuff. So it's a really good thing to kind of keep in mind and keep in your back pocket, because it's something that you can do that works for you in both ways. And it kind of functions as your friend at the company that can let you know, like, hey, they're going to be hiring for this role and you should apply, but also works in the reverse as like, hey, this person's really interested in working with you, maybe you should take a closer look at their profile. So as we get started, like I said, I'll throw that link into the chat here in just a second. Last thing before we get started is this slide on empowered engineers. Alicia, would you like to take this?
Yeah, absolutely. So I just put this slide together because I just wanted to give, some insight into, the title of this chat and sort of how we think about engineering at Chainalysis, and like the way engineering at Chainalysis was sort of sold to me during my interview process, and how it really spoke to me and informed my decision to join the company. I think when we talk about empowered engineering, a big piece of that, pretty much the biggest piece, is like, that first bullet point there around, owning problems to drive solutions. So this is kind of where it all comes together, when engineers are really understanding what the goals are that we're trying to achieve, and seeing ourselves not as implementing other people's ideas, but really bringing our own expertise, our own problem solving skills, our own understanding of the business, and our own like specific skills and talents to the table to drive solutions forward. There's a link there to Marty Kagan's blog, which I highly recommend. He's actually a product person, a fairly prolific product thinker, and he talks the most of anyone I've seen about empowered engineering. And I think it really speaks to how important this is to impact on companies, that a product person is driving this so much, where he really talks about how engineers are really the ones in the best position to see what is just now possible with technology. And that like really puts us in a position where we need to understand what's going on in the bigger picture, because then we can use our technology skills to raise when we can actually suddenly do something that no one maybe would have thought to ask us for because they didn't realize it was possible. It puts us in a position to know when something's going to be easy and take a couple of days and might have a big impact versus something that might take weeks and not have as big of an impact. So that's really the idea of empowered engineering and why it's fundamentally so important to driving impact at companies. Tried to make it active here with a few verbs around like coding with intent, like really making sure as we're writing code that we're knowing what problems we're solving. We're trying to make things better and easier for everyone, you know, all the time, making our code easy to review and easy for people to maintain. Really understanding business context and sort of setting the technical vision from there. And yeah, just again, having that context of what the organization is trying to achieve and how you as an engineer fit into that. I think another really important piece of this is around understanding the expertise that your colleagues bring to the table as well from across the company, and making sure you know and you have that context of when to pull them in and when it's best for you to make the decision, when it's best to get input from someone else, trying to take feedback well and really like thrive on feedback as much as you can. And really understanding the full scale of like all of the different expertise that your company, you know, we tend at tech startups to work with a lot of really smart people who have a lot of interesting context to offer. So really knowing when to pull others in, I think is a big part of this. And then ultimately, I think empowered engineers, you know, we empower others, like most importantly, our customers, right? At the end of the day, we're there to build things that make their lives easier or their businesses better or their lives more fun, like whatever it may be. So that's like obviously always first person to keep in mind. But also, you know, we empower when we take it seriously to drive solutions, good solutions as engineers, you know, we really empower our other colleagues to focus on the work that's most important to them when they don't feel like they have to like project manage us or constantly asking us for deadlines or constantly double checking what we're doing. When we take that responsibility and accountability seriously, we allow them to do better at the work that they really, really need to dig into to then in turn drive bigger impact in our work. And then I think empowered engineers, you know, we empower other engineers as well. Like we try to make things easier for them. We try to give each other the benefit of the doubt and we focus on results and work together as a team to achieve them. And yeah, so that's I just wanted to set some context about exactly what we're talking about when we're talking about empowered engineering. And thank you all so much too for joining and submitting questions and everything. I'm really looking forward to talking a little more over the next 45 minutes or so.
Very cool. Thank you for that. Okay, so as we jump in, I just want to call out that if you did submit questions for this chat ahead of time, we have collected all of those, condensed them, removed kind of redundant questions, and we've arranged them into what we think will be kind of a conversational format. So to that end, I'm going to pause on this screen and then our next slide for a couple seconds each in case anybody wants to take a screenshot. Again, you don't have to, don't feel like you have to take notes. You can always review the recording later, but some of our more type A joiners appreciate kind of knowing what is probably coming next. So if you have questions outside of this framework, or if you don't see your question on this list, please, please, please feel free to raise that question. That is the best way to make sure that your question gets asked and answered is to come off mute and ask it, or to put it in the Zoom chat. Just to highlight for anybody that isn't aware, if you don't want to be on video or you don't have video capabilities, but you still want to come off mute to ask your question or comment, you are still more than welcome to do so. And if you don't want to come off mute, that's not a problem either. I will be monitoring the chat. So let's see, this is our next slide. Sorry guys, I usually flip that in the middle. So please feel free to take your screenshots if you want, and then we will jump in with our first question. And like I said, if your question better fits something that we're gonna come up with later, I might, pull it from the text thread and ask it, when we get to that subject, but please feel free to direct this conversation as we go. So Michaela, geez, I'm so sorry. Alicia, can you talk about your experience working at startups? What have you seen are the pros and cons of working at a startup?
Yeah, that's such a great question. And I could probably talk about this for the whole next 45 minutes if you let me, Meg. But overall, I have to say, I have loved working at startups in my career. I think, fundamentally the benefit, the pros, it's also kind of like a lot of the pros and cons will end up being two sides of the same coin. So I think that's something to keep in mind, with a lot of jobs. And I can only speak for my own experience, and I don't have extensive experience at larger companies. So I guess that's my little disclaimer as I talk about pros and cons of startups, like juxtaposed against what, I guess. But anyway, I think at a startup, you have so much more opportunities earlier in your career to take on more. I mean, fundamentally, that's kind of, what it's all about in terms of career progression. I was leading tech leading for a platform in my previous role that was doing millions of dollars in sales every day. And, that was such an amazing experience to understand, to have that responsibility in my own hands and work with a team and see how that works. And I never would have gotten that experience at a much larger company. I also think, for me personally, I think what keeps me really going at startups is, I'm very fascinated by business models in tech, like how the whole VC landscape works, like how technology business models work. I think at the end of the day, that's something that is a personal interest of mine that really keeps me going in startups. And if you like that's really part of it. I think, I think some of the cons, again, are kind of like the other side of the coin of taking on more earlier in your career. So some of those sorts of things that might be cons for, depending on where you're coming from, is just like maybe less support sometimes projects that might be a little more likely to kind of go off in a direction and need to be kind of reined back in. The flip side of being less experienced and taking on more is that you also work with less experienced people who are taking on more. So everything isn't going to be as structured. Sometimes there are less like career ladders and stuff like that. And, things can be more subjective. I think you might find yourself more choosing to jump around a little more when you focus on startups in your career. So again, like it's really about what you want and what you don't want. But overall, I've had an amazing experience working at startups and I really wouldn't give it up.
No, I think that's absolutely true. PowerToFly is the first startup I've ever worked for. And I kind of found a lot of the same things. I think the biggest thing for me was that if I wasn't sure how to do something or had an idea and wasn't sure how to execute it, I could always ask my colleagues, and we're very teamwork oriented, pitching in, sharing knowledge base, that kind of thing. But you're also very encouraged to kind of go out on your own and learn stuff. So if you really want a handbook for something and to follow protocols or whatever, this might not be the kind of space for you. But if you are one of those people that likes to learn and likes to, kind of suss out information, I do, and I find it really enjoyable.
Right.
There is one question in the chat. This person wants to know, when does a startup stop being a startup, if you know what I mean, within Alicia's experience?
Oh, this is such a great question. Love this question. I think that it's funny because I think some companies just have this startup mentality very much in their DNA, even as they sort of grow. And I don't know, it's kind of a depends on who you ask. I feel like I sort of use the term startup when I'm describing my own career as companies that used to be startups and still feel like have that startup culture to me. For example, companies that, for example, are not very process driven, or companies that where, the ambition of the business, maybe there's 500 employees at the company, but the ambition of the business is thousands of people could still be working on it, so I think it also depends on the ratio of the ambition to the number of people working, and not just the number of people outright. And also, just sort of some companies just put less emphasis on process, and that can be a mixed bag too. And so I think that can also be startup-y as well. And companies where you do get where they're willing to hand over big projects, big work to less experienced people, also I kind of might refer to as a startup.
Yeah, I would agree with you there.
I just wanted to thank you for that answer. I thought it was quite brilliant. When you said that some people, some companies just have startup in their DNA. And I thought, wow, that so resonates with what I'm doing. That's just so brilliant. So I'm going to bring that back to my team, because this is really, we are sort of an evolving platform, and it's not something that you're ever, that's why I asked, it was me who asked the question, when does the startup stop being a startup? Because I kind of feel like that process is never ending, although I've been here for 8 years, doing this. And it just, every time I blink, something makes us pivot, something new gets added, a new project comes on board, a new team is created. Great. Like, it's just, lovely. So thank you for that.
Thank you so much for joining, Michaela. Thank you so much for asking that question. I know it's a great question. Great point of another thing we could probably talk about for 40 minutes in and of itself.
Yeah, my goodness. No, I'm sorry. I live in Germany, and I've just been having insane internet problems. So this is like godsend. That's why I'm not turning on my video.
The internet gods are smiling on us right now.
Yes,
today.
Yes. This is
Thank
great,
you so much for joining.
Thank you, Michaela. Okay, so one of the questions that we got asked next, this person wanted to know, do you have any advice on getting started in the startup scene as a new developer? I don't really know where to begin, especially since these companies are small and don't have established engineering teams.
Yeah, this is another, great question with some kind of ambiguous answer, right? I think it really depends, I think some startups are, and the startup scene in general can absolutely be great for new developers. I think I guess I want to kind of maybe take this as an opportunity to just offer some advice for newer developers and kind of just what to look for, like my biggest advice to new developers is, it is, especially in this climate and in general, it's honestly something that I see as a bit of a concern in the tech industry in general, but it can be hard to get an entry level position in software. A lot of companies, I don't really know how this is going to work in the long term, but they do seem to want to hire more experienced people. So as a newer developer, I would, focus on finding a position that allows you to push code to production on a regular basis. Focus on that, pushing code into production, being able to spend time writing code and getting it into prod. Remember, particularly the first startup you join will probably not be the last startup you join. And if it is, hopefully that means you found something really, really great, And ultimately, I think it's really about having some realistic goals about what you can get from a position, from your first position, and being really laser focused on what you need to do at your current level to get to the next level, whether that's at another company or your current company. I'd like to be able to say, new developers, look for mentorship, look for all of that. And you absolutely should, but a lot, I don't know, companies seem to, some of them, I don't know, it seems to be hard sometimes to find that mentorship. I don't necessarily, I feel like I kind of stumbled my way through my first couple of years as a new developer. So don't make perfection the enemy of good. Sometimes I think in the beginning, you might have to kind of have some of that grit and just realize really it's a really great career. There's maybe just a little hump at the beginning, and try to just get yourself well positioned to just keep learning more and keep having impact on your resume. Make sure you're doing projects where you can understand and articulate the impact of the project and have that on your resume, and be able to explain the technical decisions you've made and also the impact it's having. If you're doing a couple of projects like that, then you're in a great position.
Yeah, thank you for that. And actually the don't let perfection be the enemy of good is a huge mantra here too. And it's one that I had to as a really, really terrible perfectionist, I had to really break myself of. And it's hard, but you're right. It's so useful to not kind of let yourself get bogged down if you're doing it exactly right from the jump. How close are you getting, and what are the changes you can make as you go to learn more and do better at later on? Coming from a little bit of a different angle to the same kind of idea, we had a question asked in the chat. This person says they're trying to get back to work after a career break. Do you think that Coursera courses would be of interest to employers, or should I go for a larger paid for boot camp style course?
I am, I think it really depends, it's going to be so much about, I think some of the factors I think about, not having gone, been in this position myself, but I think, it depends on how comfortable you feel, I guess, with technology and the skill sets that are out there. I also wouldn't, I'm not sure what you've already tried, obviously, but I also wouldn't hesitate to just look for the new jobs and try applying, and even just to get feedback and stuff. At the end of the day, that's gonna be, I hope, that's gonna be a good way to gauge like how much of a gap you actually have. And I just wouldn't underestimate yourself. And if you've had success in the past as an engineer, regardless of any kind of gap in your career, you're still have more experience than a lot of people, right? So I just wouldn't underestimate what you already have going for you. And ultimately, I think however you can sharpen those skills and represent those skills well in interviews, like go for that. I think boot camps are a really great tool. I guess I hate to see people spending thousands and thousands of dollars if it's not absolutely necessary. I guess that's just my personal, impulse. So I would just turn over all of those stones before going straight to the boot camp would be my advice. But yeah, I haven't been in this experience myself, so it's the best I can help with, hopefully.
Well, thank you. Thank you for kind of, trying to answer what you could. We really appreciate stuff like this.
I asked that question, so I just want to say thank you for answering it. And yeah, I think you're right. It's probably a combination of being rusty. I've been out for 8 years, but just obviously, as you say, try and trust myself and put myself forward for things. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Louise.
And Louise, one thing I would flag for you is that having sat through a lot of these, now I'm not a software developer by any stretch, but having sat through a lot of these chat and learns, one of the biggest things that I've taken away from it is that when companies are intent on a very traditional learning, like history or a traditional education background, or they're very specific about where they want this learning and this knowledge base to have come from, they're usually upfront about that. They usually say, like, you have to have a degree in this or a related degree in this field, or whatever. They usually say that up front. So as long as you're not if you're just going the boot camp route for like the name recognition or something, it could be helpful at certain places, but probably more than likely, whichever way you're best able to get the knowledge base is probably the best option for you. Like Alicia said, if you don't have to throw the money at it, maybe don't. Because if you're the kind of person that doesn't need that structure to pick up on something and really learn it, you can always demonstrate in like a test, what am I trying to think of, a screening test or something, like what you can do. So, and Alicia's right, don't underestimate the skills that you already have. Like 8 years is 8 years, but that's still, you have a lot of experience that you earned before that is always very useful.
Okay, thank you.
I would also add, sorry, I work with Alicia. I'm the recruiter on the team. I would add, I don't know where you are physically in the world, but there's a place called the Recurse Center that's really good. I tend to see mostly very experienced engineers go through there. It's not like what am I looking for? App Academy type of boot camp. It's more for people who are just trying to level themselves up. So it's actually made for developers that are experienced, and it's more like self-taught and self-directed. I would say look it up. I think it's mainly for New York people, but it's a good resource if you'd like something to just like shore up skills or something.
Excellent.
Recurse Center is so cool. I've always I've had it on my mind for years now. Mitch, we should hire someone who did Recurse Center. It's awesome.
Thank you, Mitch, for jumping in on that. It's very appreciated. And this actually leads in really nicely to our next question. So Louise, did you have anything else that you'd like to ask before we jump to the next?
No, that's fine. I do have a degree in computer science, and I did have 16 years experience, so I shouldn't on paper have trouble, but I do have trouble getting a job. So I just need to sharpen my interview technique, I think. So thank you.
Well, we have a lot of chats on that, and you can always watch our past stuff for free. So I'll drop links in a little bit where you can search for stuff like that.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Okay, so along the same lines, our next question asks, what are your best tips for someone to move through the ranks from entry-level software engineer to a senior or lead role? What are some of the necessary skill sets? And actually, I do want to call, before we answer this, I do want to call attention to the chat. I did throw in LinkedIn URLs where you can connect with Alicia and Mitch, as well as Hannah, who is another one of the recruitment staff from Chainalysis on today's call. So please feel free to check those out and connect with them if you'd like. So Alicia, what would you say are some of the necessary skill sets to kind of climb that ladder?
Yeah, I think sometimes, maybe I think couching this a little less in the specific skill sets you need and more about the achievements you should be going after, and to demonstrate your ability to kind of take a problem from point A to point B in a pretty independent way. That's really, and some of the ways things you can think about, it's kind of like taking the foundation of your technical skills and layering another one or two things on top of that. So for me, a big part of that, I would say, when I got promoted to this in my previous company into senior software engineer, was around my ability to work cross-functionally and build relationships across the company, as well as the business context, which, like, as I've mentioned, is just naturally very interesting to me. And I was able to kind of fold my understanding of the business into my work. And also, of course, it's about the technical, right? But the technical is kind of the foundation, and it's not necessarily like you have to be that much more technical to go from entry to senior. Like, it's really about taking a problem and being able to solve it independently. And I think if you focus more on like the skill set per se, you might get a bit overwhelmed, because everyone has an opinion, like, oh, Redis is like the most important tool, or like, oh, like everyone should know about this or that, or everyone should know like a statically typed language and like a dynamically typed language. Like, all of that gets so overwhelming. But I would really focus on like looking at the achievements of the senior engineers around you and your network at your company, and try to understand what the scope of those achievements are, and go after projects that allow you to also have driven those results or had those achievements.
I love that way of looking at it, of focusing more on the achievement as opposed to I feel like sometimes people feel like it's putting the cart before the horse, but no, if you're focusing on the achievements that you're meeting, or the goals that you're meeting as you advance your career or grow your career, you're right, you will kind of organically collect those skill sets. I keep thinking video game terms, but like, what I mean? Like, if you meet the achievements, then obviously you've demonstrated specific skill sets, so you've had to develop those to meet the achievements. So yeah, it can be a really great way of thinking about it. I also read this question as maybe a dichotomy somewhat between developing specific technical skills versus soft skills. Because I feel like, especially from what I hear from a lot of these software chats I sit in on, the soft skills are honestly just as important as the technical skills. So, yeah,
absolutely.
Okay. So keep in mind, everybody, we only have about 25 minutes left in today's chat. So if you have questions to ask, please feel free to come off mute and ask them, or you can always put them into the Zoom chat. This next person had asked, my latest experience has been completely front end. Are there opportunities within the organization to train someone up who has the passion to learn how to develop blockchain solutions? Now, I feel like this was more Chainalysis specific. So if this was your question and that's not what you're asking, please feel free to add some context to this. But Alicia, how would you approach this question?
Yeah, I really wanted to, make sure we answered this question, because I wanted to use it as an opportunity to plug the fact that I don't have any prior experience with blockchain or crypto whatsoever. Like, I've had a couple of friends who have worked at Coinbase or whatever, but other than that, I've had like a completely like cursory passing understanding of the space. And I think it's a great opportunity for someone who might be more interested in it and compelled, especially by the business case of it all, like to get involved in crypto without having that prior experience. I think we're really looking for engineers with a broad spectrum of talent and experience.
Awesome, thank you for that. Let's see, I did see Latima come off mute. Did you have a question that you'd like to ask, or any context or comment you'd like to add?
I was just going to say that is exactly my question, that the way you posed it. I mean, I've been in software development for well over 10 years, but as of the last 3 years, I mean, I can talk blockchain and bore everyone to death for the rest of this call. I'm like highly passionate about it. So I just wanted to take this opportunity to connect and ask that particular question, and also maybe follow up later on with Alicia and figure out where to go from here, because I'm inspired by her answer.
Oh, that sounds great.
I'll say that we also we have front end here.
Right?
So,
yeah.
Don't get too discouraged. I haven't in a sec, but we're gonna have front end engineers, so don't be too discouraged if you don't see it on the website. We're just trying to close up stuff for this year.
Oh, well, I'll definitely be sending out an email. Thank you.
Thank you. Looking forward to hearing more about your experience, Latima.
Thank you so much, Latima. Okay, so next question. This person wanted to know, do you have any favorite books to recommend? I'm guessing it was probably based in like software and learning and that kind of thing, but I'm gonna open up the question entirely, because let's be real, we're all looking for different entertainment routes right now. So Alicia, do you have any favorite books to recommend?
Oh, I did. I kind of came with my little holy trinity of software books, which I'll say, but the novel I'm reading right now is called The Unforgettable Life of Addie LaRue, and I think it only came out a couple months ago, and it's awesome. I love. If anyone read that book Circe by Madeline Miller, it kind of has that, which is another one of my favorites. Kind of has a little bit of a vibe like that, and it's been great. So that's my little novel recommendation. As far as the software books, I think the three I really like are Pragmatic Programmer, Designing Data-Intensive Applications, and Domain-Driven Design. Oh, there's also like a weird one called that I used to leaf through a few jobs ago that like my VP of engineering had on his desk, that was called Enterprise Integration Patterns. And I feel like that really helps you get a sense for like distributed systems, but it's quite dry and it's more of a reference book. And then, I think there was a question around specifically books to help you level up from senior to staff. And, I asked a staff engineer at Chainalysis for his thoughts about this. And he, I thought he made a really interesting point. He recommended this book. I'll drop the name in the chat. It's a book around the power of willpower. And I think his general point was kind of around how, as you get more and more senior as an engineer, it's really like, the path with other senior leaders starts to converge a lot more, and those same skill sets that like executives and people like cross-functional leaders and the people we look up to at our organizations about leadership, getting things done in an organization, all of that stuff starts to become very, very applicable as you get more senior as well.
Awesome. And I'm actually gonna flag you. We've got a bunch of people asking if you could repeat the names of those books. So what I'll do is I'll remind Alicia when we get closer to the end here. If you can give me those names, then we'll make sure we include that information in the rewatch link that goes out in like 1 to 2 days with this, like the email that goes out to all the registrants.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you. Okay, so this next question asks, what are some strategies you use to balance the time you have in your day between technical work and product conversations?
Yeah, I think pragmatically, like the most, the little strategy I really like to use are these, time blocking your calendar. It seems to really be the best thing for all of us, like in terms of getting those blocks of time for our technical work. You can use that do not disturb feature on Slack, and it's great because you can like kind of talk to your team about it, because they can actually go through it and send you a alert anyway if it is urgent. So you don't have to worry about missing something urgent if you're on do not disturb on Slack, you know what I mean? So little things like that I think are really helpful. I think also just like really making sure the meetings you're in, like you have every right if you're in a recurring meeting or something to, you know, ask for the agenda and make sure it's continuing to be useful to yourself as well as the other people in the meeting. And so, yeah, I think it's like a lot of that type of thing is the best. And I also think these two things too, I think the more you do them, hopefully they feed into and inform each other. So maybe they don't always feel like two completely separate contexts as you start to become, as it starts to become more like second nature to do both equally in your engineering role.
Yeah, I think that's probably a very good point. Okay. So this person wants to know, how do you start working your way to not only focus on the technical side of the project, but also to be able to talk directly to the customer and work on the project management side as well?
Yeah, absolutely. I think this is a great question. I think one thing I do, you know, just want to mention is that it is really important to have that technical foundation before you start digging into like the more customer stuff or taking on more. Just check in with the people around you and your management and tech leads and stuff to sort of make sure you're on the same page about what that technical foundation needs to be for you. And then once you have that kind of as the prerequisite, I think what like might start drawing you in is that it's kind of starts to feel like a necessity maybe at a certain point. I know I had moments earlier on in my career where I felt like if I had just been in the room talking to the customer or the equivalent of the customer myself, then, you know, maybe we wouldn't have had to redo something, or maybe this little thing that happened wouldn't have happened, or maybe something would have gone better. And so I think like as you naturally gain confidence in everything, you kind of starts to feel like a necessity. So you find your ways to make your way into that room. And then of course, just always being really proactive with the people around you, especially in tech, like really advocate for yourself and the opportunities you want. Like make sure your manager knows if you want to do more of this. You know, make sure they know, make sure your tech lead knows, make sure your PM knows. And I would say that's kind of the approach there.
Yeah, I think that's a good call out. You know, people don't know what you're trying to develop or what you're trying to, you know, hone your skill set on if you don't let them know. So if you can raise to, you know, your superiors or your, you know, whoever, you know, manages you, hey, this is something I'm trying to work on. Could you give me, you know, some opportunities to develop this skill? Or is there, you know, a project I could work on that would help me, you know, brush up on this area? You're never going to get that chance if you don't ask for it. So the worst they can say is no or complete silence. And best case, they either give you what you're asking for or reach, you know, kind of a truce somewhere, no, compromise somewhere in the middle. All right, so we've got about 15 minutes left in today's chat. Please make sure that you get your questions asked if you want to make sure that they get asked before we run out of time today. This person had wanted to know, how should engineering, product management, and marketing work together? I am a marketer and have found that there can be overlap and friction in research, road mapping, and priority setting. Does product marketing at Chainalysis report to product management or marketing?
Yeah, so I actually asked Leela, our head of product marketing, for her take on this question. And so she did want to, you know, she mentioned, you know, marketing and product marketing at Chainalysis reports into our revenue team. So it's not part of product management, it's part of marketing, I guess, in terms of how this question is phrased. And I believe like and you know, I don't know that much about marketing, to be quite honest, and I haven't worked with marketers that much, but I think what she was saying was around how product marketing is really responsible for understanding industry trends, understanding the market, and bringing that feedback and closely collaborating with product management. And I guess like going back to our little empowerment theme, right? I think as engineers, when we really take it upon ourselves to try to understand where product management and marketing are coming from when they make decisions and all of that they can really focus on all of those market trends, understanding the competitive landscape, the vision, what our customers want. if they know that engineering is there taking care of the solutions to the problems that they're identifying. So I think that's how engineering can, make sure we're trying to empower people from other disciplines to focus on what they're really, really good at.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think that's a really good way to put it. So thank you for kind of pulling back the curtain a little bit for Chainalysis there. This person had asked, how do you develop the business acumen in a product role? With an engineering background, the strategy and roadmap part comes naturally to me.
Yeah, so I'm kind of taking this question as, I guess I'll answer like how I feel like I've tried to develop business acumen in my role. I think for me, or like, I honestly think of it, I guess, more as like curiosity. That I don't know if I have acumen or whatever, but I think it's a lot around asking a lot of questions and just being curious about kind of how everything sort of connects and loops together in the business. A lot of businesses have this really fascinating, like a lot of technology businesses have like kind of a flywheel idea comes up a lot, and like kind of understanding how the flywheel at your company works, it tends to be really, I think, a big part of understanding the business. How does growing the business in one part feed into another part, which then feeds into another part, and that's like a flywheel. And also like as engineers, or like a lot of our product people as well, like we tend to know SQL, and if you know SQL and you can kind of query the database and understand how the product's being used and have that kind of curiosity, or read through the code and all of that, that can be a really natural feeling way to develop an understanding of the business. And using all project work that you get assigned or that you're involved in as an opportunity for learning and building context, I think is also just like something good to have at the top of your mind. And yeah, just having that curiosity and everything.
Thank you for that. I think you're right. If this was your question and you had maybe a slightly different angle you were hoping to pursue with it, please feel free to come off mute. And actually, while we're waiting there, I'm gonna kind of put a placeholder in. So please feel free, if you have a question, to interrupt me. I'm kind of saving this spot. So if you have a question that you want asked, you don't have to feel like we're kind of moving from question to question and you don't have a shot to ask things. I'm pulling up in the chat, or I'm going to set in the chat in just a second, a link to some of our past chat and learns, as well as some upcoming ones, specifically regarding interviewing, to kind of address what Louise had said earlier. So I wanted to make sure I did that before we ran out of time today. So I'll throw that link into the chat here in just a second. It doesn't look like we have anybody coming off mute to ask a question, so we will keep.
Hey, Alicia. Hey.
Hey,
how are you?
Good. Hey. How are you?
I'm good. So I had a question about any advice on recent undergraduates. I studied, computational mathematics, and it's a bit of both. There's a lot of jobs to choose from just because of the career path. But yeah, like right now with this whole situation going on, if you have any recommendations.
Yeah, totally. Hi. Yeah, Danny was our a fantastic intern on my team in a prior role. So happy, Danny, that you joined us today. Yeah, I think like for new grads, in this environment, I mean, it seems challenging, but I think a couple of things as far as choosing a job, maybe try to really ask questions about how the company has moved to remote, how they're supporting employees in that transition. Particularly, hopefully, companies have some sensitivity around new grads in particular and onboarding them remotely. I think really keeping your mind open to how async communication works, and yeah, like looking for companies that kind of are going to be empathetic and flexible with you in this strange environment, I think is really important, and probably is also a sign of the type of employer you want to work for anyway. And also I would say try not to let it impact you too much, and try to do your best to adapt, and like let's hope we'll all be in like a slightly better position soon.
Yes, totally. Thank you so much.
Of course.
All right, thank you so much, Danny, for jumping off mute to ask that question. So we have about 10 minutes left. So just, calling that out one more time. And I'm actually going to throw another link in the chat for our past chat and learn. So you can check out our past events that we've held. You can always view those for free. They're also, a lot of them are hosted on our YouTube page. So you can also like scroll through that. So this person, I wanted to know, did you have any experiences at companies where other engineers did not understand or care about customer priorities? And if so, how did you handle that?
Yeah, this is a great question, kind of holding my feet to the fire here. Yeah, I think, I think engineers generally would always care, right? Of course, I think sometimes it's more that people's eyes are on a different ball, and I think it's just, I think in general as an IC, right, at the end of the day, your job is to work with the people around you and hopefully, lead by example, give feedback through the right channels, and stay focused on the results, and, make sure you're, giving others the benefit of the doubt, providing helpful feedback and suggestions when you see room to improve. I think, yeah, and I do think, like, more to the point of the question, like, I have observed times when I felt like we built features that just clearly didn't work as, like, for the intended purpose. And, I think one of the big practical things I try to really stay away from as an engineer, in this vein is, to kind of dumping a feature out into the world and then moving on to the next project without actually, understanding if it's actually working for the intended purpose. That can be a really, good way to make it seem like, even if you do care, that you don't care about your customers.
That's a very good call out there. And I think it's also a very popular, like kind of a recurring topic on a lot of these chats, because it's such a, I feel like there's either you have one view on it or you have the opposite view. There's not really much gray area in between. Okay, so this kind of harkens back to something you'd said earlier in the chat. This person says, I like the idea of having engineers measure their own goals. What have been the most impactful goals that you've measured for yourself?
Yeah, I think a big part of this is when it's having like collaborating with business stakeholders on the goals for like the project you're building. Like, how do you know it's successful? I used to work in e-commerce for like a few years, like before I joined Chainalysis, and I always really loved that because we really could often measure our projects in incremental revenue because orders are just flying through your system and you naturally kind of, in your systems know the price of it. So it was quite transparent to us how much incremental revenue each project was driving. So get as close to revenue as you possibly can and make sure if revenue isn't the right thing that you understand like what the tie-in is to revenue. I mean, ultimately that's all of our goals, right? Or cost savings. I think that's where a lot of engineering measurement can be really, really effective for getting those sort of like, sometimes they kind of get dismissed as like these quality of life improvements for engineers, but at the end of the day, if you can measure things like how much time you spend on support inquiries, how often people throughout the company are like reaching out to your team with issues about the system, like malfunctioning, those little things, if you can measure them and kind of put an hour time value on them, like essentially it really is such that engineers' time equals money in many ways. So if you can really like measure that, it's a good way to get some of those improvements, tech debt improvements and stuff prioritized, like, and put it again, at the end of the day, it comes down to like cost savings. And like, yeah, I think like a lot of our goals are best if we can try to really tie them to the revenue or the cost savings as much as you can.
Excellent. Thank you for sharing those examples. I know that this can be, like a lot of these questions where, the answers can be kind of subjective or might, you start everything with the, it depends. Thank you for providing those examples. Okay, so in our last 5 minutes on today's chat, I want to kind of circle back to Chainalysis, which I think we've touched on a lot during today's chat, and you've done a really great job of providing, a kind of a peek inside the world that you work in. I know that Chainalysis is hiring. I'm going to throw that link again in the chat thread so you can, You can follow them on PowerToFly. I'm just going to call out for good measure one more time. When you follow Chainalysis on their PowerToFly page, what it's going to do a couple different things for you. What that's going to do is it's going to first and foremost put you on something called Chainalysis Follow Network. Now you can follow companies as you want on PowerToFly, and you can follow and unfollow them at will. So please don't feel like you have to follow someone and then you have to follow that company forever, even if you're no longer interested in them. But make sure that if you are interested in Chainalysis, especially if you take a look at their page and don't really see a role that would suit you right now, make sure you follow them. Like I said, it puts you on their follow network. So it tells Chainalysis that you are really interested in working with them, which flags you to people like their HR team, or if they work with PowerToFly and want us to source roles for them, that is the first place that PowerToFly talent advocates look. So I know this from experience. I used to do that job. So it also is going to alert you when they post new roles, when they participate in events like today, and when they have any cool updates that they want to, let people know about. When it does this without, kind of cluttering up like your news feed or your timeline, please. So definitely take advantage of that. So Alicia, I know that you are going to address one of these questions at least, and then Hannah or Mitch probably will address the others. But for you, what's your favorite part about working at Chainalysis?
Yeah, I think for me, the thing that's so exciting about Chainalysis and ultimately why I joined is like the ambition of our business vision, and how we're having we have this really cool goal of helping the world adopt blockchain more broadly, and getting into that space and trying to see how it is just seems like a really amazing opportunity. It isn't, in my opinion, an amazing opportunity. And yeah, I think that in some sense is my favorite part. I also love the team is really great here. So.
Excellent. Thank you for sharing that. Okay. So as we go on to the other two questions here, Hannah or Rich, please feel free to, or Mitch, I'm sorry, please feel free to come off mute if you'd like to, kind of add clarity here. But we like to ask about what positions that you're hiring for at Chainalysis, as well as if you have any tips for someone who's interested in applying.
Yeah, absolutely. So I do, just for, I guess, introduction purposes, I do all the technical hiring right now. I'm hoping to hire a friend soon, so maybe I'll be splitting those responsibilities eventually. But for now, I do all the tech hiring all over the world for us. So what I would say is, like, obviously we have our positions up right now, and most of them I would say are fairly back-end focused, fairly infrastructure focused. Like the big focus of the team right now very much is build good bones and build a good foundation so that we can just like put pedal to the metal next year. But that does not include what is coming up very, very soon, which is what I will call a tsunami of hiring that's going to be happening very soon. If people didn't see, we just raised $100 million. We just broke the unicorn barrier as a company. And that is going to translate into a lot of engineering hiring. I think it's somewhere around 50 roles next year, something like that. That's planned for, and that's going to be across the board: back end, front end, infrastructure, test, product. So just because you don't see anything right now doesn't necessarily mean that it won't exist. I would say probably the biggest priorities coming into January are going to be sort of back end related. That's where most of our challenges lie, and infrastructure related is probably where I would see most of the roles being. But yeah, in terms of tips, I would say don't overvalue how much, Alicia brought this up earlier, we don't value blockchain probably nearly as much as other probably companies in the space. We're not nearly as niche in like the cryptocurrency or blockchain space as some other sort of crypto or blockchain companies. We're actually quite broad. The fact that Alicia didn't have blockchain experience was we didn't even blink at it. We're looking to hire good engineers first and foremost. Blockchain is something that can be taught. And I would say just, don't get discouraged. We have very specific needs right now because we're trying to sort of address gaps in our teams. But the more we hire, the more flexible we can be about what we hire. So if you really want to be here, just hold me accountable. Keep me in your inbox and just ping me every once in a while. I wouldn't say there's any sort of secret sauce about working here. I think we just try to hire good people. Excuse me while my Roomba invades my privacy. But yeah, that's it.
Thank you, Mitch, and thank you so much for the the forward thinking. I know not everybody has the ability to kind of look that far in the future and project what you're likely to be looking for. So thank you for sharing that with Alicia, before we adjourn for the day, I know we're a minute over, so hopefully I'm not impeding on anybody else's meeting times. But before we end for today's session, is there anything that you didn't get a chance to touch on that you wish we had talked about, or anything that you'd like to leave our audience with today?
Yeah, there was a question around imposter syndrome, and I feel like this is an interesting topic to me where I just want to say that sometimes I feel like we shouldn't be too hard on ourselves about having imposter syndrome. And maybe it's just the other side of the same coin of just being like a humble person who's in a role that's a little more ambitious for you. And, we don't all have to like root that out in ourselves, you know what I mean? And I just think that, it's good that we all have a name for it now, but, let's not go too crazy with being so hard on ourselves about the imposter syndrome. And I just want to say thanks again so much to everyone for joining. And I hope this was helpful. And I hope to, be able to hear from all of you or some of you about your experience and how you see great engineering and soon as my colleague at Chainalysis.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Okay, so before we close out for today, I do just want to flag that I will, today's session was recorded, so I will make sure that I'll make sure that when the rewatch links and emails go out in 1 to 2 business days, everybody that registered for today's session will get that email. But I'll also make sure that some of the links that we've sent out today, as well as the information that Alicia had provided about some of those software resources is included. So if you have any other further questions, please feel free to connect with the rest of the Chainalysis team. I'm gonna keep the room going for a couple more minutes. You can go back into the chat and grab some of those links if you need. And I look forward to hopefully seeing many more of you on upcoming chats in the future. I also threw a link in there where you can check out our upcoming events for the rest of this week. So hopefully I'll see you as soon as tomorrow. Have a great Tuesday, and I'll talk to you later, guys. Bye.
Bye, thank you.